What's good, guys? Welcome back to another Doghouse session with Joe and Matt. This time we got Jazz. We had Rick on the last one, so slightly better looking guest.
As Jazz just said, a rose between two thorns.
Yeah, that's quite a good one for you. That is whipping out.
Thanks.
We're going to do this one a little bit differently. Typically, we just talk on a list of topics that we've sort of predetermined and let them flow. We put out a little Q&A earlier to see what you guys wanted to hear us talk about. And me and Matt have both got a long laundry list of questions in. So we're going to talk at you about those topics for an hour or so. And I hope you guys find great value in it, because it actually is the things that you want to know. So do you want to, should we go through all of yours and then all of mine?
I'll do that.
Like that?
So I'll start off with Big Jace. Just got married recently. Absolute amazing wedding. So congratulations. Looking sick as well and getting some top level results over in the coaching game. So big shout out to him. And he asked the question, did you ever feel a sense of peer pressure to compete? And did it ever cross your mind? Shall I answer that first?
Sure.
Personally, no. Like, I've had no desire whatsoever to compete. Even though like people have sort of said you should or whatever, I think there's always been a couple of things that have kind of come to my mind. One, it's never really matched like my value system at all. It's kind of, I don't think I'd get anything from it. It doesn't scare me, which sounds like a maybe arrogant thing to say, but what I mean by that is whenever there's something that scares me, I'll do it. Like, it wasn't something that would necessarily put fear into me. I just thought I'd have to give up a lot to get there, and that's not what I'm willing to do. I think added to the fact that objectively, I don't think I'd be very good at it. Like, I don't want to push myself to that level of leanness. I don't want to push myself to get to stage. I don't want to give up that much. So like all those things combined, I've never really felt the desire to do that. And I love the fact that people have got their own journey, and I'm certainly the last person that's ever going to be like anti-bodybuilding. I've done quite a lot of posts about that. I think when people go anti-bodybuilding, I think it's quite a rude thing, and I think you're trying to put your personal impression on the rest of the industry, which I don't like. But no, it's never really crossed my mind. But I've joked about it. I've joked about it a few times, but it's the sort of thing I just never, up to now, I've never had any desire to, and I can't see myself ever changing that. And my primary focus is on building business, living my life the way I want, and it doesn't really slot into that. But yeah, I thought it was a really cool question. I know you've never competed, Joe. So what about yourself?
No, I've never competed, and it's probably stranger for me as a coach, given that practically all of my clients are competitors. I mean, off the top of my head, out of all of my client load, four that I can think of offhand are not competitors. So I pretty much do work with competitors. I only onboard competitors now as well. And people see me coaching competitors at so many shows. It would be, is it strange that I don't compete? And I remember having this conversation with Dean McKillop last year when I was toying with the idea of competing. You remember this, saying, yeah, I think I'm going to prep for later this year. I felt like I was in a good spot to do it. Business was stable, et cetera, et cetera. And Dean was saying, like, well, he essentially said, you're an established coach. You're good at what you do. There's no benefit outside of your own personal gain. So only do it if it is for you. And honestly, it was just for me the reason why I wanted to do it. But then I had to weigh up a pretty solid cost to benefit analysis. I mean, the glaringly obvious thing is that I wouldn't do well. I wouldn't do well at all. In fact, I'd flop. I'm not genetically suited to be a good bodybuilder in any sense of the word. And I've poured my heart and soul into this for many, many years. Not anymore, but, you know, I've done everything in my power to be a better bodybuilder, and it never came off for me. Well, I made progress, but, you know, you look at someone like Leon, he's on my mind because the video he posted yesterday, and you're like, okay, you know, there's such a huge genetic component to this. I'm not doing that, nailing that off. Two, I've got responsibilities at home and to my clients that require me to be on my game. And I can't be excessively tired, fatigued, in a bad mood. I'd like to say that I could be stoic through the process and not let that affect me, but I guess it's easy to say that until you're there. Especially now, the thing I love most is jiu-jitsu. And if I'm going to compete, I'm not going to be able to go in there and perform well. And if I can't go in there and roll at 100%, life isn't really worth living for me at the moment. So, you know, it wasn't for me. And my clients continue to do well at shows. I continue to get higher caliber clients without me competing. So it's not on the cards for me now.
It's funny Jace asked that question because Jace obviously built his coaching business up. And he's doing really well on that front. I had dinner with Cal, Tom, and Christian earlier in the year, and they've all competed. And everyone had the same mindset. They were like, it's not really for me anymore. Not in the sense they don't enjoy it, they don't love the journey and all that sort of stuff. But they're so far established in their coaching career, it would take away from that. And I think for me, my thought process is always, you're either a coach or a competitor. And I know there's obviously some really high-level competitors who are coaches. That's fine. But the way I view it, I don't think I could do both.
Yeah, there's a sliding scale as well based on your clientele. Like if I think anybody watching this, me and Jazz have just got back from Dallas in the last couple of days, and I was there with Joe Bryman, who's one of my clients. He's a IFBB Pro classic competitor. And if I try to think, okay, what would I have done on that trip if I was competing? Right, you know, I got there after an 11-hour, whatever hour flight. I did a full day of work. I had about 2 hours of sleep, and then I had to wake up, go to the show, come back from the show, did a whole day's work after that with all my clients. And I didn't sleep the night before the show at all, did I? I had to go straight through. So it's like, I probably ate about 600 calories over 3 days. I slept 2 hours in 3 days, not through choice, but just because I was looking after Joe and looking after my clients. And you can say as much as you like, you can make it work. There's only so many hours in the day. And I understand that's by choice. Yeah, I could cut my client load down. I could not go to my client shows that are international in the States or whatever. But then again, to that cost-benefit analysis, I consider myself a professional, and I wouldn't be able to offer that service that I do if I was a competitor.
Yeah, I think it's so many coaches as well. I know we're kind of going off a tangent here, but so many coaches, I think they only compete because they feel they should as well. Like, I know, again, Jace asked the question, so I'll speak with him. He's doing his kind of elite lifestyle thing, and he looks fucking mint, but he's not pushing it the way he used to. I think a lot of people go into it, I have to compete. I've got to compete to set a presence. I think, well, you're a prime example of that. You don't, do you? You just need to be good at a coach.
Nobody cares about what you look like, I don't think.
No.
Maybe initially on, like, here's the thing. If you look great, it's easy to get a big client load, but your client churn will be extreme if your coaching isn't up to standard. It's easy for someone that looks good to get new clients. It's not easy for them to keep clients. And you can look at my track record or Matt's track record, or even Jace's track record to some degree, because he doesn't compete anymore, you know, and he's doing better than ever. And Cal and Christian and Tom, the quality of your work is what speaks to the highest caliber client. You know, like I was just talking about Bryman, he's a fairly high caliber client. He's an IFBB Pro. He's very popular on social media. He didn't sign up to me for the way I look. Of course he didn't, because I look like shit. All of my clients,
You do yourself a disservice there.
all of my clients look better than me. He was saying, I saw what you did to this person, saw what you did to them. I need that. And then we've gone and got it. And look at him now, you know.
I also think going back to the peer pressure thing, I've never felt peer pressure to do anything. Like, do this, fuck off. Not doing anything. I'm not doing anything I don't want to. And I think there's probably a similar commonality between all like high level coaches, if I was to put myself in that bracket, but a lot of those people, are you going to do what you don't want to do to appease someone else? I bet you every single coach, if you've got them in a room, you do this thing that you don't want to do, they'll be like, no.
You know what's funny? Like, I remember asking you that question about competing at BST. Like, how many years would that have been ago?
Oh, that's when you were just my client.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember asking you like all those years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah, and you literally answered the exact same way as you did back then.
I've never had any desire whatsoever for it. I fucking love that everyone does it. Like,
Yeah.
I love it, and I love everyone's journey. And I probably get more joy out of that, which is probably why I'm a coach. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
say something there.
This is the thing. I've had quite like an emotional time with that, because competitive bodybuilding was like the first thing that I really loved. Sorry. And
You're the second.
It's
Jazz.
fine.
when I was younger, it was hard for me to think, why is the one thing that I love this much something that I can't be a part of? You know, and that really hurt me at the time. You know, you can curse whatever for that, but then I realized along the way that there is a place for you here. You know, every time I'm at a show, every time I'm peaking a client, every time I'm prepping a client, the joy and the excitement that I get from that reminds me, I go, this is it. It's not the stage. This is it for me, you know. What about you, though? Have you ever felt... I know that you do compete,
Yeah.
But have you felt pressure to compete for social media reasons or anything like that?
Like business reasons, obviously.
Yeah, business reasons.
I say, even I'm trying to like tally this in my head, I say 80% no, 20% maybe. And then for me, like my reasons to get into competing are like so far different to anyone else. Whenever I speak to like their reasons, like it's just nowhere near anything what the reason why I did. Like I got into weightlifting because I had really bad hips. I couldn't run. I couldn't walk properly. I couldn't walk up the stairs. Couldn't wear heels. I was like just broken as a person, and I had to literally go, right, my first goal is to run on the treadmill for 5 minutes. It wasn't even to compete. And then once I did that, I was like, right, I want to run for the bus. I want to run for the train. It was like those really small little weird things. It's like, right, I want to get into the gym. When I walked to this, like I kept seeing this class in it as like the men's section, because that's back in like 10 years ago. But right, I want to step into that gym and not feel like I'm going to have an anxiety attack. So like my like little reasons came from just me, myself, my own personal stuff. And then once I did that, I was like, oh, this like stepping on stage thing, right? I just want to step on stage and like not get nervous, just get over this public fear thing. Like that was just the reasons for me. And I always go back to like why I compete. I always go back to those reasons because that's why I started. Whereas you hear, like it's very rare for me to hear people have that same reasons for competing anymore. It's a lot of times like I saw it on social media, like I got into compete before I started my business. And I'd probably say like Compact definitely, I guess, influenced it because the point I was like, right, I want to understand every single federation. I want to understand every single part of the industry. So I feel like I'm confident in my business to then advise people. And like when I had that stint of like not competing for 3 years, there was a point where it crossed my mind thinking, are you people gonna like judge me because like I've had a bad post show, I've gained all this weight and I'm not competing anymore? But I was just like, I can't put that ahead of like my own mental health or my own relationship with food and my everything, do you know? And even like now, I don't feel like I need to compete for my business. Like I've proved that, I've got all the insights, I've done it competitor wise, I've done tanning, I've done so many parts of the industry. And even now, like there's generally yes, I'll still pick up things, but I wouldn't say that I actually feel pressure to do it. And some of my friends still saying to me like, what, are you still doing this after 10 years? Why are you still doing it? I'm like, because I'm still trying to prove to myself that like I have this vision of my head, like being on stage and being a performer, because I was a kid wanting to be like a dancer and all this sort of stuff. And that got completely squashed because of bullying and everything like that. And like, it's kind of that's the way I see competing now. It's like my opportunity to kind of have that moment that I never
love that.
got. I was thinking about it a lot, like why am I doing this prep? Like especially this one, I was like, because I want to have that moment that like I had these big dreams when I was younger and they just got completely squashed. Whereas I had to completely go from the bottom and try and build myself back up.
I wish I'd been a dancer.
You'd be a good dancer.
I would not be a good dancer. Fuck me.
Especially for someone like myself, like, this is something we can probably talk about, like maybe later on in this video. Like, I know I'm not genetically the best built for competing. I didn't place for 5 years. I wasn't particularly good, but I kept going because I still had this personal thing that like, I want to feel more confident within myself. And that's why I kept going for 5 years. Whereas most people literally will try 1 year, might not compete, might not place, and then they'll just sack it off.
I think people are doing it for the wrong reasons though. Like you say, I think you're doing it for the right reasons, your reasons.
Yeah. And like, I also know that where I'm at in my own journey, if I want to have the bigger goals that everyone else has, I know that I would have to do things that don't sit well with my value set anymore. So it's like, that's why I'm kind of like, I'm just happy with me, myself and I doing this little like journey. And yes, I'm probably, there's people who've been in the industry the same amount of time as me, done way more. And that's great. And I never look down on like those athletes or those friends that I've got that are like achieve so much more. Cause I'm like, I'm not that, it's not like a...
Stay in your own lane, isn't it?
Huh?
Stay in your own lane, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And it keeps me happy and it keeps me going. And like, I'm excited this year to actually step on stage and be like, right, like last season was the first time I didn't shake on stage. I remember coming off stage at Two Bros being like, Joe, I didn't shake on stage. Like, before the results came in, I was like, I didn't shake. I was so happy. And even when I got my placings, I was like, yeah, but I didn't shake on stage. Like that was that was such a big thing for me. Like I can't even express it. It was huge. So I was like, cool, this is fine.
You must know that Alex Hormozy quote. It's
No.
This is one of my favourite. If anyone doesn't know this, Alex Hormozy quote. I didn't make this up because I'm not that smart. But it's you don't get confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You get confident by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are.
I like that.
So, like, essentially, you just built this massive stack of proof. I don't need to be nervous anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like a little thing like that.
And it's funny when people comment now on like my social posts and they're like, "Oh, you seem really confident." I'm like, "The
Yeah.
lol."
See me when I started.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of come from all these little building blocks. So yeah.
I think I've got a good follow-up question to that one.
You do?
Yeah.
I was going to say we do one each.
All right, you go
But
then.
you sure?
Yeah, go.
Right. My first
You've
question.
got loads.
I do have loads, yeah. So we won't come to all of them, but we'll go in the order that they came in. This is from Eddie B. Jellick. I really apologise. Starting ratios of test to primo when working with new clients. Okay.
I can take this one.
Do you want me to kick this off?
Crack on.
So I wouldn't recommend anybody program or periodize their anabolic androgenic steroid stack design based on arbitrary ratios. There is no one given ratio that's going to work for any and all individuals, and we also have to be aware that as the doses of these compounds increase, the resulting metabolites, such as estradiol, or the effect that DHT derivatives are going to have on reducing estradiol or shifting the androgen-estrogen ratio changes. So if you found one given ratio that works for you at 600 milligram, for example, that ratio is not going to be efficacious when you get to 900, 1200, etc. So rather, I would recommend auto-regulating. So in this case, in this example, we've got testosterone, so an androstane, and was it primo that they said?
Yeah, primo, yeah.
And primo, so a DHT derivative. So of those two, we know that we, in a massing phase, ideally want to keep our estradiol as high as the individual can tolerate. So if you were accumulating up your dosage over time as needed, which is what we would recommend, you would titrate your testosterone in absence of the primobolan until you began to incur some estrogenic side effects, whether that be slight onset of gyno, fluid retention, lethargy, things like this. At that point, you know to further escalate the total milligrams, you need to bring in the DHT derivative. So you may decide to add 50 to 100 milligram of primo for your next adjustment. And you could do that for a little while. And then you could start to try titrating up your testosterone again. Ultimately, there is no answer to this that we could give each individual. It's also going to be dependent on the state of play when you're in that place. If you're a much lower body fat, then you're going to be able to tolerate a higher dose of testosterone than at any other time. So constant auto-regulation based on data collection is about as good as you can get. Slowly titrate over time, experiment with different total milligrams of both, leaning more towards adjusting up testosterone if and when possible. And that's the only real way to do it.
Give a really simple example of that is if I was to go to a gram of gear and Joe was to go to a gram of gear, we would have completely different amount of testosterone to primo, right? I can't handle much testosterone. I convert a lot to estrogen. I get very estrogen sensitive. I might be able to handle 300 mg to 700 mg of primo. Joe, you may be able to go higher. You maybe go to a lower.
Oh yeah, gram total. I used to run like 700 tests, 300.
There we go.
Last,
So completely different ratios, and we would expect to see the same growth outcomes, like gram, like with ourselves with any other drug stack. But that's the ratios we can handle. So I think trying to get it's like trying to set up a diet with a ratio of that. Going, what's the ratio of fats, carbs, protein? Don't know. Set it based upon your lean mass, all those other things. The same for this. Go on your biofeedback, and you're going to get the best results.
Yeah. What's your next question?
The one that was going to follow on from Jake's question, I got asked this earlier, was how do you determine if a coach is reputable? Someone asked me that and said, I've been screwed over by a coach before. How do I find a coach that's reputable? And I thought that's actually quite a good question, to be fair.
Ask clients.
Well, I'd have an answer, but what would you say? Because I answered the last.
Yeah, what I would say is look at their body of work. So the things I tend to look for, and this is just looking at anyone to see if someone's reputable. Can they admit they're wrong? Right. That's just. I'm not going to any specific order here, but I'm just thinking out of the top of my head. If someone can admit they're wrong, I usually think they've probably got fairly good ethics and morals. They can admit when they've made a mistake. They've been doing it for a long time, and they've got evidence of that. They've got evidence of getting good results. They conduct themselves in a professional manner. When I say professional, I don't mean you've got to wear like a fucking shirt and tie, but I mean they come across well, they seem like they have good interactions with people, they don't just flame people online for no reason. And again, the most important thing for me is, are they displaying good characteristics for an extended period of time? If someone's doing that, they're probably fairly reputable. And again, like Jazz said, ask their clients. They usually, you can tell on a coach's page, they've got sort of client transformation, social proof. Message them, ask them if they do that.
A lot of girls do that, by the way.
Yeah.
They will literally like reach out to one of the clients being like, I'm thinking about this person. What do you think? You're surprised how many girls do that.
To add on to that, I got Joe Brightman on the brain because I'm peeking him in a minute. Joe, if you're watching, not because I just love you, which I do.
We're both Vanquish, mate. There you go.
Bro, we're
I can get the memo.
literally Brightman Central in here. On my first call with him, he'd come to me off a recommendation of Corey. And Corey's actually an ex-client of mine. So that was one thing that I was going to mention in terms of reputation. Like, if your clients that have left or you've parted ways, if even they can say good things about you, then, I mean, it sounds like I'm bigging myself up here, but it just kind of popped into my head, is that I know for a fact that from the day Corey signed up to the day that we parted ways, there was not a single moment that I didn't give 100% of everything I've got. Every day, every show I went to, I gave it 100%, all my attention, all my effort. So there's no excuse, even under the worst circumstances, for them to be able to say anything bad about you. That's something worth mentioning. With the body of work stuff, I would slightly caution because, and for example, Hani Rambod, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but he ain't going to be the best coach ever, right? But he's coaching Olympians, the highest level. It is simple to coach somebody and get great results when they've got incredible genetics. So if you're looking at a page of guys with insane genetics who get great results, it's not too impressive, at least in my opinion. If you've got a coach that gets really solid returns on investment in individuals that aren't so genetically blessed, alongside their clients having fantastic experience of the coaching process, then that's the epitome of a good coach to me.
There's one thing this is going to sound like a really weird thing to say, but I look at someone's social media, right, and I say, are they consistent with that? Because if you're not consistent with the business-facing aspect of your work, you're probably not going to be very consistent as a coach. And I do tend to see a correlation. Now, there's obviously not a direct correlation because someone could be mint at social media and getting their stuff out. But if someone's consistent every single day, like posts, stories, putting out good content for a long period of time, they're probably going to be pretty consistent with their check-ins and the way they treat their client. Obviously, that's not a one-for-one, but I see a lot of coaches, they'll come up every now and then, they'll do a blast on Instagram for a week or two. I've got loads of spaces available, and then they disappear. You think, I wouldn't want to work with that person. That doesn't seem very reputable to me. If someone's coming up and down like that, I'm like, oh, they're probably going to be similar to their check-ins. How good are they going to be getting back to me? Probably not very, I don't think.
I think the last thing is like you can get the sense of a coach by just that initial like consultation process, whether it's on DMs, whether it's like on the on like a call as well. Like, trust your gut. If they say something that seems a bit weird, or like there's something a bit off, or they're being too pushy, or like that sort of stuff, for me, I'm just like, ugh, like,
yeah,
you can't fake that.
Talking about that, I think I've definitely lost clients by doing this. If someone will come to me and say, I'm looking at doing this, and I'll just be, actually, I think it's the best idea. I'll actually disagree with them. And I know I've lost clients on consultations before because they're like, blood work's horrendous. I want to go into a gaining phase. I want to really push drugs. I'm like, I don't think it's a very good idea. And I'll sort of hold back on that. And they're like, oh, I'll find someone who will. Cool.
Yeah,
I don't want to work with you anyway because I don't want to fuck you up, essentially, because that will fuck you up. Yeah. I think is the coach willing to maybe disagree with you on something? I like that.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I bored you, Joe.
I'm very tired today. Okay, the next question is from Unorthodox Nutrition, Big Mike, who I am actually filming for the second time. I'm looking at you, Jake. Jake lost all
Bad
the
worksman blazes to us.
So we're recording a BJJ Bonanza for the Physique Collective gang.
Bonanza.
So, yeah.
Bonanza.
Bonanza.
Not Bonanza.
I said Bonanza.
You said Bonanza.
I think we'll have to watch that. I think you'll find us at Bonanza. Anyway, for anybody that's interested in combat sports and moulding that in with physique development outcomes, those videos are for you. They're going to be on the Physique Collective app only. Anyway, this question is from him. This is for you, Matt. This is putting you a bit in the hot seat here.
Go on then.
Well, he'll have to like make up some
I'm
reason.
gonna run.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll see how quickly you can make bullshit up.
Go on.
Can Matt outline? So actually, context for this one is recently I asked Matt to do some training programming for me because I'm actually outsourcing everything in my life right now. Mike actually messaged me saying, there might be some personal information in this, so I won't share my side of the deal, but it's not sexual. But
I'm not interested then.
he basically said, "Can I do your nutrition for BJJ?" And I was like, "You know what, mate? On the theme of me outsourcing my whole
Absolutely.
life, do it." So I wanted to outsource my training to Matt because I was tinkering too often on the endless obsession with optimality for a target that doesn't actually exist. He has asked, can Matt outline his approach to your training, to your lifting for both BJJ and bodybuilding? So basically,
What was I doing?
yeah, why has Matt programmed things in the way that he has, knowing that I've got some body composition goals, sort of, i.e. just look all right, but mostly improve my jiu-jitsu performance?
So I think the first thing I always look at with sport performance specifically is I go, it's just general physical preparation, right? So Joe's going to get better at BJJ by doing BJJ. That's the way he's going to get better. He's not going to get better with me programming a fucking Cybex hack squat. Like, it's not sport specific. So everything I'm doing within the gym world is essentially just to get him stronger, to get him able to have a good level of muscle mass and make sure that he's actually training and enjoying it. Those are the main factors. Because I think, I imagine when you go to BJJ, right, Joe, you're probably going to be stronger than most people.
Yeah.
Like physically stronger.
It might be hard to believe this, but I am the most muscular man in the room. It's obviously a very small room.
But what I'm saying is, you're not going to be, we need to 2x your strength.
No.
Right, so Joe sent across some physique photos, and he definitely does himself a massive disservice because he looks mint, and he's being way too humble.
I'm a lot lighter than I was in those.
See,
So he's constantly putting himself down. I'm not having it. So basically, we took a little look at Joe's current training. We looked at his current physique, and we said, right, what's your availability to actually train? Like, what can you dedicate in terms of time and effort? And we basically just took what he's kind of doing at the moment and shuffled things around a little bit more volume, because Joe was on very much the low end of the volume spectrum as I would view it, but a little bit more in to kind of get him to what we would consider maybe his MEV, so kind of 4 to 6 sets per body part per session. And we went, one of my favourite splits, push-pull legs up below, which is a very nice split, because he wants to train 5 days a week. And we just try to add a lot of, I guess, movements which he can do stably, he can do and progress. And he essentially didn't have to think about, with some variety on things like arms, on delts, which we program quite with a high frequency. And to be honest, that was most of it, just getting Joe out of his own head, so to speak, really. There wasn't a great deal of programming that I needed to change from what Joe was already doing. It wasn't like he was doing a bro split and I was like, Joe, what the fuck are you doing? It was just a slight bit more volume, changing some exercises, ones which I think would offer a bit more carry over to BJJ. For example, we added in some split squats, some unilateral work.
Yeah, some
that sort of
unilateral
stuff.
leg press, more ab frequency, which is key for jiu-jitsu, strong core.
And then added in just an overhead press, which we can talk about whether that would be particularly sport specific, but I just thought it's a novel stimulus we can try, see if we get on with it or not. Obviously, I know you got your shoulder injury, so it's going to be off the...
Yeah, because of the injury, I've actually only run the split once now. But I'm doing it. I'm all good now. Like, I've done a week now, and it's been good, and I've been like back to my previous numbers. I'd say alongside what Matt mentioned, for more quote-unquote sport-specific stuff or like jiu-jitsu specific stuff, eccentric is not particularly controlled. Well, it's always under control, but I'm not tempoing anything. I'm definitely not pausing in any shorten range, but I am getting into shorten ranges that would be productive for jiu-jitsu. For example, let's say we're training for hypertrophy specifically. We all know length and partials and the benefit of the length and range. Like if I'm doing a Y raise, for example, where if you were doing sort of a length and partial, you might want to go to like there. Whereas for me, for jiu-jitsu, I'm getting right back as far as I can, trying to get really strong in end ranges, both end ranges.
That's a really good point. I was going to say the full ROM type stuff as well. So when we look at sports specific training, typically we do tend to see a better carryover for full ROM training than shorter ROM training. only because you're exposing the muscle to a full range.
Yeah, so think about what you might be doing. Like, for example, if you're like on bottom defending in jiu-jitsu and you want to shrimp out and push your opponent away and you're only doing length and partial presses, it might only be neurological, but you might only be strong to like there. You know, but I want that big lockout power. So my presses, again, really explosive, boom, to full lockout, everything like that, just purely for carryover, really. So
Yeah, there wasn't any sort of weird, making you do like a Turkish get-up or anything like that.
No, because I think that kind of stuff is just naff. You know, when it comes to sport-specific training, just doing the sport is key, like Matt said, and then just generally getting strong with stable movements with low injury risk. Because jiu-jitsu is already so high injury risk. I mean, look, I just had to have a month out, literally just a takedown from a fucking white belt. So, you know, you're going to be injured quite frequently. You don't want to introduce an additional risk in the gym by doing loads of crazy Bosu ball squatting and nuts stuff like this. Just basic hypertrophy training is sufficient. You're just going to have to manage the volume with the volume of training that you're doing. So I am yet to see, because I was training things like 4 sets every 5 days prior to Matt's programming, and I think so that was like 6 sets per body part per week. Now, like my lowest volume's like 8 sets with all rest pauses on the upper body is probably closer to 12, 13. So it's a lot more than I was doing. In fact, for the upper body, it's double. And I've only just literally today got back into jiu-jitsu post-injury, so I'm going to see how the recovery is. But hopefully, if I can still come in the gym and progress whilst doing my normal jiu-jitsu training, then that's money, because I am getting more stimulus. So clearly not.
And that's the thing we sort of spoke about when we started, is that we said, I don't know if this is going to be volume that you can recover from. So we have a discussion. And essentially the discussion goes, Joe, are you progressing? And if he goes, no, I go, right, we need to pull that back then. Because the chances are he's not under-recovered. So not under-stimulated, he's under-recovered, which means we need to pare back that volume.
Or underfed. This is one of the
That
good
is also
things
another
with
factor.
Mike doing my nutrition. God damn, I've been eating some low calories recently. But yeah, thanks for the question, Mike. I'm sure we'll talk more about that on Saturday. Europe.
I've got a ridiculous question. I'm not even sure it was a real question, but I mean,
Is it a bot?
We can try.
we'll have a go. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say his name because I don't know if I should say his name with this question. Jan Pex, go on. I'm going in. I'm going to drop you in it, mate.
Big up Yampex.
I've lost the ability to hold in a piss. Any tips around this?
Well,
And I thought, firstly, guys, we've got a decent set of knowledge between us, all three here. If we your first go-to for medical advice, please stop.
man, there's an interesting dynamic in the coaching world, isn't there, where people will literally ask you questions that are for a medical professional.
I get some mad ones.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best, but I always say it's not my wheelhouse.
Oh, apparently pregnant people, when they like struggle with their bladder, they have to do like bladder exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go
if
and
you
get
on
your
Google
prostate
Maybe-
checked.
and do bladder
Yeah.
exercises. Like you're basically like you're pissing, and then halfway through the piss you have to just like stop.
Isn't that like
Kegel.
pelvic floor type
Something
exercise?
like that.
Yeah.
I think Kegel's something else. In all seriousness, go and get your prostate checked
Yeah,
out.
absolutely.
And we're not medical professionals. I think this is a good topic, actually, is like, because I get so many questions that are legitimately for a medical professional. Look, we look at people in their underwear and tell them what to eat and what weights to lift. We're not trained medical professionals. We've got a bit of chemistry knowledge, I'm sure, but
It is interesting though, isn't it? How like that for them the line gets blurred.
yeah, it's an authority.
Yeah,
You know,
and I get it. It's hard to get information. Like if you're in the UK, NHS, you've got to pay for it in America. It's quite difficult to get information. But please don't hold us up as people got all the answers. Because I'll happily sit there and say, I don't fucking know. But some people won't. And you end up down a rabbit hole and thinking that, I don't know, this supplement's going to cure your disease. You're like, maybe just go and see a doctor, please. Like, I'm worried you're going to get hurt listening to that. But yeah, definitely get your prostate checked, as Joe says. Maybe speak to a doctor. Maybe, the only thing I can think is like, I struggle to hold a piss in terms of like, I need to go all the time because I'm drinking so much fluid.
have you heard that thing on Modern Wisdom?
What's that?
Where Chris Williamson talks about, I can't remember the word he puts on it, but basically how people that work from home and through COVID have like neurologically trained themselves to get that signaling that they need a piss far sooner than they actually do.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like that.
Do you know what? This is a really random story. So when I was a kid, we used to go on car journeys. And then I go and visit relatives or whatever. And I was like a young kid, and I thought, I know what I'm going to do. So because I don't want to stop, I'm going to go for a piss. Every time I need one, just empty my bladder. And all that happened was I got in the car and needed it straight away. So I conditioned myself to the fact that I needed to go straight away. So it sounds like that.
Okay, next question is from Fraser.riseup_.
New client of mine. Shout out Fraser.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. G.
Big up yourself, Fraser. Thoughts on modern day generic human growth hormone versus pharmaceutical? Has the quality gap become closer? So, when we're talking about the quality of recombinant human growth hormone, you'd be talking about the dose. So, how accurately dosed is it as compared to the label claim? You'd be talking about the purity. So, what percentage of the molecule is growth hormone and what percentage is something else, and the dimer. I've got an explanation of what dimer is, D-I-M-E-R. It's on my Instagram highlights. I recommend you check it out because it'll be a long time explaining that. But you want low dimer, high purity, and the dose accurately or at least as accurate as possible. I did used to know the ranges that pharmaceutical growth hormone could work within with regard to purity. I can't remember what it is. It's like 96% or something like that. And an easy way to work this out is to get a HPLC test on your growth hormone, and that will tell you precisely what quality growth hormone you've got. I've HPLC growth hormone many times. I've never used pharmaceutical growth hormone because it seems like an absolute money sink when I've HPLC'd my growth hormone and it's come up with north of 98% purity every time. 0 dimer. The only dosing inaccuracy I've seen is actually on the growth hormone that I'm using now. Fuck it, I'll say it's from Adelphi. That came back as 11.9 units when it's advertised as 10. Now, I'd rather it be 10, like accurately dosed, but I'm not going to complain about going, okay, there's 12 in here.
And getting 20% for free.
Well, I just dilute it with a bit more water, because I'm not trying to be Superman. So actually, I save a bit of money there. And that's it. Now, there is a bit of discussion you can have around the various isoforms of growth hormone, various kilodalton, but I don't think that's an issue these days. So I would say if you've got access to good quality generic growth hormone or access to HPLC testing or somebody else's HPLC test, the same batch that you're going to buy, do that.
Save yourself a lot of money.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people that use like Pfizer and stuff like that, and anecdotally they do say they get a benefit. Again, I listen to anecdote, absolutely. I've got some good mates that use it, but personally I just think
It's the same molecule, man.
it's the same molecule, exactly, it's the same thing. And for me, it's like someone going, this test prop's way stronger than this test than Anthe. No, it was the same thing.
Or it's the same thing as saying pharmaceutical test is stronger than UGL test.
Yeah,
If they're both dosed at the same milligram per mil, it's exactly the same thing. Your physiology doesn't distinguish a molecule. Like imagine that molecule gets the androgen receptor, goes, hold on, this wasn't made in a GMP compliant facility.
We're not interested.
You're not binding
Fuck
here,
your
mate.
gains off.
Yeah, it's nonsense. So yeah,
That's really annoying. That question's made me need a wee now.
I need a piss as well. That is problem.
we can pause if you.
No, I'm going straight through.
We're in the car journey now.
I'm in there. I've not tried to do it. So Luke Tomp 95. Shout out Luke.
We're shouting everyone.
Everyone's going to shout out today.
Big up, Luke.
Big up, Luke. The importance of a rebound phase post-show for first-timers or novices and how to stick to it. So
How to stick to
how
it.
to stick to it. So I'm going to touch on this in terms of, we're probably going to go for a different point of view. So I'm going to talk about this in terms of how to stick to it. And Joe, if you want to cover if a rebound's needed.
Okay, yeah.
So in terms of how to stick to it, I think first thing I'm going to say to, if you're a first timer, and we've spoken about this before, Jazz, is don't try and be perfect post-show. Most of the time you come up to the show thinking perfect, 100% adherence, and then you're going to go for a post-show meal, and then you're going to say, oh, I'm done now. That's me. I'm set. I don't need to overdo it. And then 2 days later, you find yourself binging on some cereal because it happens to fucking everyone, doesn't it? It's a common story. So don't think you're the odd one out. But the thing you want to do in that post-show period, as best as you can, is manage your rate of gain appropriately. So there's going to be initial rate of gain, which might be a couple %. Get some food in you. You're actually going to fill out. There's going to be some fluid flux post-show, especially if you've manipulated water. So you're going to have sort of dehydration, overhydration period. You're going to look quite fluidy. Your body weight's going to go up. But then you start to maintain a reasonable rate of gain where you're not getting too fat too quickly. Because if you want to utilize the rebound phase, and Joe will touch on that in a minute, you want to make sure that you're not shortening your runway, so to speak, by getting fat really fast. And the way that you're going to get fat really fast is if every week you're absolutely smashing in this 6,000 calorie off plan meal, which has become almost the norm. I'm just going to have a double pizza, cookie dealer, double Ben and Jerry's. I'm going to smash it in every single week and wonder why you're gaining 3 pounds a week. So we want to have a reasonable rate of gain at, say, 0.25, 0.5% of your body weight and make sure you stay adherent. And the way to do that, and to coin a Dr. Mike phrase, and this is something I've run with all my clients, is you climb up the hedonistic staircase. So as you come into the show, what we're thinking of is essentially we're removing a lot of highly palatable foods that you're going to overconsume. So as you get close to the show, you aren't eating burgers, pizzas, and cereal every day. It's probably very much whole foods only. As you come out the other side, the big mistake people make is they go, right, I'm going to put in my favorite foods straight away. I wonder why they can't adhere to their diet. What we're going to do is slowly ramp that up post-show and say, maybe I'll start to introduce that once a week or after 2 weeks or whatever. And the final point in terms of adherence is understanding your hunger cues and your satiety cues are always going to be in a lag. So you're going to start to feel normal maybe 6 weeks after the show, perhaps, if you got to really like a lean condition this first time you got there. But you're not going to feel full for a large part of that. You're going to start to get some control after maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But as a first timer, this is going to be something you've never experienced before. I'm hungry all the time. I can't seem to feel full. Just accept that everything's working on a lag. And if you can sort of delay your gratification to some degree for that first 6 weeks, you're almost out of the danger zone. Then you can start to really make the most of your off-season.
I think there's, before Joe goes into the other bit, I feel like, so this whole like rebound stuff, whenever I used to come out of shows, I couldn't like do the hard, heavy rebounding, really ramp up training volume because I was absolutely floored. Yep. And I just felt like if I try and do this rebound phase, like everyone needs to, and I feel like I have to, I'm just going to push myself into the gutter even more. I think especially for females, especially if they are natural females as well, having this pressure to like make the most out of the rebound and do this training. As I was like, okay, just keep digging yourself a hole and you're not going to be able to come out of it. And I think for some females, it's like, actually, no, like pull
just
down.
Recover.
Yeah, recover, pull down training volume. Like I only been able, the last season I've just done was the first one I could properly tell you I was able to recover very fast, make the most out of the rebound. Whereas other post shows, I've not been able to do that. And I think it's like, if you're pushing yourself so far down a hole, your food focus is probably going to go even higher. And you probably, that recovery process is going to be a little bit tougher. So I think it's sometimes reevaluating, being like, am I putting too much pressure on myself to make the most out of this rebound? And actually, I'm not focusing on what I need to, which is actually the recovery aspect. So yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to say.
I think you stole what Joe was going to say pretty much.
Ever, so
Well,
I am Joe.
so
I am the coach.
whether or not to rebound, and we'll first establish what that actually means, is going to be based on a series of individual cost to benefit analysis metrics. So before we get to that, like, what is a rebound? So a rebound is a term that's used in bodybuilding to essentially delineate this duration of time after a contest prep, where the theory goes that you will have an upregulated response of hypertrophy. So an ability to add new muscle mass increase beyond what you would be able to do at any other time of the year. So firstly, is that even true? Well, the studies that have been done on P ratio, which essentially means partitioning ratio, so how well you can partition a surplus of calories to muscle versus fat, in the studies doesn't seem to be dependent at all on body fat status. So an evidence-based answer would be that the P ratio doesn't really exist and that you can accrue muscle mass at any given body fat at about the same rate. The problem is that, I'll say from the other side, is these studies aren't done on contest prep bodybuilders. They're not done on individuals that are incredibly lean. And the anecdote that the rebound does drive a high degree of additional skeletal muscle hypertrophy is pretty strong. So we can't say for sure if it's true or if it's not, how much of that new muscle mass is actually just a load of fullness coming on from you being so depleted through prep. I don't know. Whatever you think, I'll go with the answer anyway. So when you get to that point, you're going to have a cost to benefit analysis There's ultimately going to come down to a personal ethical consideration. If you're enhanced, you've obviously gone into your show using higher doses of androgens. You know, most enhanced guys, 99% of enhanced guys aren't going to compete on TRT, right? So you've probably got plenty of orals in the mix, probably at, if not close to peak androgen load. And in a rebound, realistically, we're talking about sustaining or increasing that total androgen load, right? That's what the rebound is. And then cruising, so reducing doses at a later stage. So if you're getting to the end of your prep and your health is in tatters, your blood work looks awful, you feel terrible, etc., and you choose to remain on supraphysiological androgens, then you are doing yourself large amounts of deleterious health consequences. So there's that to factor in. Look, your health might be absolutely fine at the end of prep. You might choose to carry on with supraphysiological use. That's up to you. Alongside what Jazz said, the physiological fatigue, is this a time for you to go balls out with training volume or any other input or size of the surplus or whatever when you've got a great deal of accumulated fatigue that you need to wash off first? So ultimately, there has to be an analysis of where your goals are. If you're pressing for a pro card and you're right on the edge of the pro card or whatever and your health's looking good and you're not too fatigued, then I can understand it. If you're just a hobbyist competitor, I think you'd be pretty insane not to come down to TRT after your show. You'll still gain a wonderful amount of muscle just from the supercompensation that's going to occur from having that much physical energy, if anything, post-show, getting back into a surplus, you know?
I think Leon, when he did his RFL prep, is quite a good example of someone that is in a prime position to rebound.
Yeah.
He's obviously only dieted for, 8 weeks or something?
I think it was 4 weeks.
Well, yeah, that. He RFL'd, rapid fat lost into a show. He hadn't been exposed to a very high level of drugs for a particularly long period of time. He's prime. He's almost just done a mini cut. Like, bang that in, and you can reverse out. If you've got loads of stress on your physique, then don't do it. And I know you did a really good podcast with John Jewett on this, so if anyone's interested in going into like a bit more depth, Joe did a podcast on John Jewett with John and who's
Luke.
Luke. Gone blank
Luke
there for a
Miller.
second. That's a really good one. So definitely check that one out. And I know Kuba was actually talking about this quite recently, basically saying what we just said there is keeping things tight in the post-show period. You're going to get a lot more gains in terms of just staying on top of your nutrition, recovering, and then being able to push training on from there. That's going to be where you're going to make the most of it. Because I've seen it before, like Joe says, where someone's just fucking ran themselves into the ground with a rebound. That's their off-season gone because they're so fucked. Injuries, stress, made no progress, and health's in a bit of a dark spot as well.
Yeah, my next question was actually, as an enhanced athlete, taking advantage of post-contest rebounds. So I think we've done that. Okay, next one, the muscle architect.
That's a cool Instagram name.
That is a cool Instagram name, isn't it? Big up yourself, muscle architect. I want you to change your name by default to muscle architect.
Mr. Muscle.
Biggest challenges you face as a coach?
That's a fucking good question. Biggest challenges? I think the biggest challenge I probably face, honestly, is trying to get your clients to see themselves the way that you see them. And that you're dealing a lot of time, even with competitors and people who have achieved quite a lot in their own life, they tend to almost struggle with self-doubt or struggle with self-belief or self-esteem, whatever it may be. And these are all things that hold them back massively. Like I coach a lot of coaches, and they all seem to display pretty much the same thing: is they have a lack of self-belief, lack of time, a lack of sort of self-respect and boundaries. You're like, if you did all these things, you'd be so much further along in your coaching business, in life, in your physique. And sometimes it's, you want them to be able to see them through your eyes. And I say it to some clients, I'm like, if you could only see yourself through my eyes, you'd actually see how far you've come and how proud you should be of yourself, really. But they're kind of in this spiral. So one of the things I try and do is unlock that with people, is to work on them instead of like this comparison to everyone else, or I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, is look about how far you've come and kind of how far you've gone on your thing. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges I certainly face, is trying to get everyone to kind of switch on to the fact that they're doing really fucking well and almost give yourself some praise, give yourself some thing. And you're a classic example of this. You put yourself, I know you don't do it, like, you do it like a jesty way, but putting yourself down, it's like, Joe, give yourself some fucking credit, mate.
I joke, but inside I cry.
Yeah, exactly. Give yourself some fucking credit. So like, whenever I hear anyone do that, I'm like, fuck that off right now. Like, give yourself some credit. Like, you look mint, and again, I think we're all too quick to kind of put ourselves down sometimes. It's like, no, give yourself the fucking credit, and life looks a little bit better that way.
I think at the moment for me, I'm finding it's that real middle ground between like females and weight on the scales, because it does matter and it doesn't matter. And it's hard to try and like sometimes communicate, because obviously I've been doing this for a long period of time, so I've got that real nice like balance, whereas it's hard, I think, as a coach, especially if someone's like in a prep, trying to read where they're at with their relationship with their scale weight sometimes. Obviously, I haven't been coaching as long as you guys, but I'm always very aware of like how much I'm talking about it and then what their response is to that. Does that make sense? I think with females, that can be sometimes a bit of a tricky one to navigate, because it does matter, but it also doesn't. But you don't want them to overthink on it, but you have to mention it, because obviously that is a indicator of what some of your decision processes are. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah, I think I've got two. I was just thinking about there. One with respect to clients and one with respect to myself. So when I think about my client cohort, it's essentially a big group of progress-obsessed, growth-minded individuals. And I know what these guys feel, because that's me. You know, so the thing that we're typically dealing with is the itch for the next step when everything is going extremely well. For example, this is fresh in my mind. I won't name him, actually. Probably watch this. Is like, we're in this phase at the minute, like a primer, off the back of a really productive mass. You know, body weight was considerably up, condition was held so well. Got up to peak androgen load, got blood work, and the blood work looked great, even at peak androgen load, so that's not a problem. However, I wanted to put him down to cruise for 6 to 8 weeks, pull some body fat off, reset appetite. I wanted to see his blood pressure and his resting heart rate come down a touch. And it was like every couple of weeks, bro, the blood work was good, like, can we just get back to mass? And I'm like, hold up. There's benefits to gain that will sustain you for the long term by being patient here. But it's that low volume training, low androgen input. You see the physique getting a little bit flatter, a little less geary, you could say. It's not looking as good as it was. Oh, mate, I really want to get back into this now. And it's like, just trust me.
Play the long game.
Yeah. You're young. You've only competed once. You want to get a pro card. You're going to need longevity. It's not about cranking out growth for 1 year. It's about how can we grow productively for 10. Yeah. It doesn't matter if your blood work looks good. There's a lot of things you can't see on blood work. Chronic deleterious health issues. So, and I deal with that really with all of my clients to some degree. Well, not all of them. Big Nath Eccles comes to mind. He doesn't seem to give a shit about what's going on.
Nath's just chill bloke I've ever met.
How's this for an example? Why does he make some of the best progress? Look at his 3-year transformation that he posted recently. Good Lord, how has he added so much size? Because he just rolls with it.
Long game, isn't it?
Yeah, just does everything he's supposed to do. Doesn't overthink it. Wham, bam. He's 60 odd pounds heavier on stage. Crazy. And the thing that I think I struggle with most, and this is no fault of a client or anything like that, and by no means am I discounting the fact that, God, our life is so damn good. Like, we are so blessed to do this. Like, compare this to 99% of other jobs, and we are so lucky. But one thing that's struggling for me is the inability to leave work at work. Like, I remember coming in the front room the other day when Rick was here, and I was like, mate, do you ever just wish you could clock out at like 5 p.m. and just come back to work the next day? And yeah, you could say, well, put your phone on airplane mode or whatever. Look, I've got clients competing in like 4 different time zones right now. The phone goes off and I have to reply. There's no escape, you know? And that's something that, you know, sometimes I'd like to just go on a walk and not have to stop and blah, blah, blah. I like to be a bit more present. But that's a very minor trade-off for all of the great things this career gives you.
The one thing I found was like a bit of an antidote to that. I think this is a Sam Harris thing. He was like, just try and be where your feet are 6 times a day. If you can just take a moment, because I do it, you get caught up, you're like rushing around, blah, blah, blah.
I'm guessing you're talking about that anecdote he gives where he stops at the door.
Kisses his wife.
Kisses his wife, yeah. I'm not a big Sam Harris fan. He's a bit too,
I'm not surprised.
bit too materialistic.
Leave their dream, so.
He's a bit too materialistic for me.
Yeah, but you see my point is like just
Not
try and be-
materialistic. I mean like materialism.
right.
We're talking philosophy here.
Yeah.
But either way, he's saying just like try and be present for like a couple of times a day. It's like when you catch yourself getting caught in this whirlwind of shit that can happen as a coach, certainly can. It's like just stop yourself for a second and just like do that 5 or 6 times a day, and all of a sudden think like life looks a little bit better when you do it. And so I that's a really good point, Joe, because I definitely get caught up in that. Like fuck, like today, right up at 6, get your check-ins done. You're in the car, like you're driving over here. Well, I do laugh at myself sometimes because I'm thinking, what a fucking great job I've got.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh no, I'm doing check-ins with amazing clients. I'm driving over to see my mates and film a podcast for a business like I own. Oh shit, like life's hard, but it's still stuff you got to do.
Right. I think we've got time for one more.
Go on.
Oh, shall I do? I thought we were.
Yeah, no, I've run out.
It's run out. I've still got loads, so apologies for anybody that we didn't get to. I don't even understand what this means, but we'll try it.
Brilliant.
From Lucas Irvine. How to do... I hope you can pass this.
I'm going.
How to do more for less. Anything further to do besides when from execution is nailed?
Can I read it?
Yeah. It's the first one of the 4 that he sent in there. Just banging off your first one, bro.
How to do more for less. Anything further to do besides...
How to do more.
Well,
Does he mean how to get more from less?
I think he's saying how can we maximise our efficiency in the gym?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what you're saying here. So if we're talking purely from, I'm going to talk about training here. I'm assuming what he's saying.
I think so, yeah.
Honestly, the pick exercises, which are probably multi-joint for the most part, if you're going to be as efficient as possible, and then train really fucking hard. Like train really close to failure. The closer you are to failure, the less volume you're probably going to need. Again, depending on body parts and whether you're safe to do so and all that nuance there. But if you want to be as time efficient, that and then use rest pause.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, rest pause training is probably one of my favourite tools for a time efficiency standpoint.
Pretty much the totality of my training now is my reps.
Yeah.
So and I think I'll always do that now.
Yeah, I fucking love it. So if you don't know what my reps are, Borga Fagley, he created my reps. Got a fantastic new ebook out, so check that out. Actually,
yeah, it is really good. Actually, even just on like muscle cell physiology, there's great breakdowns in there.
Probably
so
one of the best breakdowns I've actually ever read in terms of simplicity. But anyway, my reps, fantastic resource for time management. Essentially, you can get 3 to 4 sets worth of effective reps, so the reps that are really going to contribute more to muscle growth in 70% less time. So, as a efficiency standpoint, like they're absolutely no brainer. Is there anything else you'd add? You said once execution's nailed.
So we're talking about maximising progress whilst minimising time cost. I think the question is inferring. So as Matt said, if you train closer to failure, I wouldn't recommend training 0 RAR because the fatigue accumulation trade-off is not really worthwhile. But I would pretty much take all of your sets to 1 RAR, so you accrue as many quote-unquote effective reps per unit of work per set as possible. As Matt said, rest pause set, specifically the MyoRep rest pause setup, I think is the most efficacious, especially if you're going to have like 4 mini sets. Like if you just pick one exercise per body part per day, like if you train a body part twice a week and just do 1 MyoRep set with 4 cluster sets, that's going to be enough volume for everyone to progress, which brings me on to my next point, is don't train with volumes that are above what is necessary to drive increases in progressive overload. I mean, could you get more from more volume? Sure. But, I mean, you literally can't get more from less, unfortunately. That's an oxymoron. Unless you sort of... Because technically, train closer to failure, that could be more.
Yeah.
Or doing MyoRep sets instead of less straight sets. Well, that could be more effective rep. You are going to have to do more, but these are just ways that you can squeeze them into a smaller time frame.
I think if we look at if you look at return per unit of time or return per set, let's say, there's going to be like an inflection point where, let's say, it might be 3 or 4 sets per body part, after which you might get a bit more gain, but maybe you've got to do like double the amount of work to get that extra bit. So I've seen numbers bandied around, and it's sort of 1 set gives you like 50%.
Yeah, I'm not sold on these numbers.
Yeah, I'm not sold, but like,
and
that's
I
what
also
I mean.
saw Greg Knuckles do a really good write-up on the fault in that logic recently, so I wouldn't put that down as anything to go by.
But I think we can all agree there certainly isn't.
There's
There's a reduced.
No, net outcome per unit of work
yeah.
done. Yeah, there will be an inverted U. We just have no idea where it is, and it's probably completely different from each and every individual, which is why, like we were discussed on the forum the other day, when someone says, well, I'm working in these ranges, it's like, yeah, that's useless, bro. Just start at an arbitrary, preferably low number, and track your progression and adjust down or up from there. You don't need to constantly change volume. If you find an effective range that you can recover from that to you is on the low end, then great, rinse it.
Yeah, why would you do more? Like, as Joe mentioned there, there's the metric I would track the most is, am I progressing in the gym? If you're progressing, sound. If you're not progressing, I do two things. I say, am I under-recovered or under-stimulated? And the way you know if you're under-recovered is if you take an extra couple of rest days, do you go back and improve your performance? Where you're under-recovered, maybe you're doing too much volume. Take a couple of rest days. If you don't come back and there's been no improvement in performance, and assuming it's not a skill type of thing, the likelihood is you may be under-recovered, so under-stimulated. In that case, you might want to add a bit more volume. But again, that's your logbook's going to tell you so much. And I feel like a bit of a cop-out when I say that, but
it's the only answer.
It's the only answer there is, really.
You know, you would be a cop-out if you were saying, well, every man, woman and child should do this.
This many sets, boom.
Yeah, it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
So.
I know it sounds really basic, but like a lot of people don't realise how much time they actually waste in the gym. So things like talking to too many people, that sounds really silly.
Scrolling. Yeah, so
Like-
I have a rest timer for this reason.
But like putting your phone on airplane mode so you're not getting distracted by messages and everything else that's going in. Actually, do you know what I did? It was timing my actual rest in between each set.
That's why I was
because I ended up just daydreaming. I'm like, oh crap!
I'm the opposite.
I've just been like maybe wasting time, and even something really small like my clients moved from doing evening training to morning training because too many people wanted to have a conversation. Also, she was having to wait so much longer to get onto machines.
Yeah,
more
we
stressful.
don't have that problem.
No,
I know, but like it's just those little like kind of look at the other avenues and think about how much time you could be saving by airplane mode. Maybe it's the time of day. Stop talking to everyone. Rest. All these little things.
I thought about one more practical one from you, Jazz. You reminded me. Antagonistic supersets.
Oh yeah,
They're a really good time saver. So let's say, as an example, biceps and triceps. Train biceps into triceps. So you can essentially, by the time you've got round to the next set of biceps, you train triceps, but you're using that rest period on a muscle group which doesn't interfere with each other. So as an example, you've got leg extension, leg curler next to each other. You could do that. But you wouldn't choose something like
biceps and biceps.
Biceps, or biceps and back, or things that cross over, or ones that have got extreme, like you could maybe do squats and bicep curls, but I wouldn't go, I'm going to do squats and then I'm going to go straight into bench press. I'm fucked.
Yeah, like at the end of my upper session, I'll like set up the cables for delts and I'll do my delt my rep. And then I'll set up the cables for curls and I'll do a bicep my rep. Yeah. And then I'll set up the cables for triceps and do a tricep. So my rest time is me moving the cables.
Yeah.
But they don't accumulate fatigue into one another. One thing as well, here's a top tip that you don't hear often. Don't rest in between your warm-up sets. You don't need to. Fatigue will not accumulate if you're warming up properly. I don't rest between any of my warm-up sets. I'm looking at the seated ham now. I was on that yesterday. I literally put it on like 30, did 5 reps. Put it on 70, did 3 reps. Put it on 110, did 2 reps. 145. Before I went into my working set, I just had 2 minutes rest and then boom, gone. So it's almost like it becomes 2 sets. Yeah. You know, you don't need to rest on your warm-ups. Don't over warm-up either.
Don't take. I've seen people take 45 minutes to go into a session.
Foam rolling and getting
in the gym that long.
Getting the dildo gun out and all that. You don't need any of that. Just the machine that you're using, the exercise you're doing, do 3 or 4 warm-ups, 3 to 5 reps each. You don't need to rest in between. Then have a couple minutes rest and have at it.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, right. I think we got quite a bit out of that.
Yeah,
question was very hard to. I don't. I've regulated my diuresis sufficiently today.
Oh, yeah,
so guys, thank you for watching. I hope that you gleaned some new insights and knowledge for that one. As always, if you want way more than this, really in-depth discussion, practical recommendations, guides on everything pertaining to physique development, go to the Physique Collective app. It is only $9.99 a month. You heard that right.
It's a steal.
$9.99 a month. Can you believe it? Please help to line our pockets. And check out my ebooks while you're there. And keep your questions coming in. Right. Thanks, guys. Peace out. Catch you in the next one.